You know the why human trafficking work is needed: to fight for the freedom of modern-day slaves. But love, passion, commitment isn't all you need to be an effective and successful anti-trafficking advocate. Learn the how. I'm Dr. Celia Williamson, Director of the Human Trafficking and Social Justice Institute at the University of Toledo. Welcome to the Emancipation Nation podcast, where I'll provide you with the latest and best methods, policy, and practice discussed by experienced experts in the field so that you can cut through the noise, save time, and be about the work of saving lives. I'm very excited to be having this person on with me today. Her name is Shamin Brown. She's an art and story activist and author of the book, I'm an Addict in Bits and Pieces. She is a complex trauma survivor who has lived experience from sexual exploitation and prostitution, along with addiction, childhood sexual trauma, domestic violence, and narcissistic emotional abuse. She shares her recovery journey in an effort to support the experiential voice by raising awareness of the multiple intersecting traumas that many sexually exploited persons have to work through in their recovery. She encourages mindfulness, self-compassion, and healing in all those various lives. And she shares her story today, but not only just sharing her story, she's been a victim, a survivor, and now she's a thriver, and she's out there in the field doing the work. Shamin has a bachelor's in social work. She has received the Joy Smith Foundation Canadian Heroes Inspiration Award. She's done speaking, presentations, keynotes. She's on the Knowledge Keepers Advisory Council. She's on the Sexually Exploited Youth Community Coalition. She is busy. I had the pleasure of meeting her. She is a wonderful spirit. I love her soul, and she has to be my first guest on this podcast. No doubt, no other person would have filled those shoes more appropriately. So welcome, Shamin. I'm so glad that you were able to join me today.
Hi, thank you. I'm so glad I get to join you today as well. And thank you for that incredible introduction. I'm honored.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experience, your past experience as a victim of trafficking, of prostitution, anything else?
Sure, absolutely. I think what I'll do is just give you a quick summary timeline of my life. It seems to work a little bit better. So growing up, I was raised by my mom, who was a single mom and was parented by divorcees that were in a high conflict relationship. So when my mom was around 6 months pregnant with me, my dad had held her upside down by her ankle, put his hand inside her vagina and tried to rip me out. So I was supposed to be born cognitively impaired, and by the grace of God, I wasn't. And then, moving from there, my mom, of course, was dealing with a lot of trauma stuff as a result of her own upbringing, as well as her relationship with my dad. And so, that, of course, affects how you parent and those different pieces. And when you don't have support from another parent, it also affects what kind of safety network you can create for your kids.
For sure.
So my brother and I were a little bit of latchkey kids. There we go.
Yeah, latchkey kids. Yeah.
Yeah, I was molested 7 times before I was 11. I was raped 9 times before I was 13. That looked like neighbors. That looked like teachers. That looked like me spending the night at a friend's house and waking up with her dad in between my legs. It wasn't one specific person over a multiple period of time. It was several people. So that kind of impacted my way of thinking around sexual boundaries, my body, my value. When I was 15, I moved out on my own and I changed provinces. I grew up in Vancouver. I moved to Winnipeg and stayed with family here. And the family that I stayed with, some of my cousins were already actively involved in the sex industry and involved in prostitution. And so I, at 16, 17 years old, spent a lot of time with them. They were around, 10 to 13 years older than me. I was introduced to pimps who were introduced as like family friends, things like that, drug dealers, etc. My 18th birthday, my uncle had a birthday party for me in a hotel and sexually assaulted me. From there, I just kind of got to a place where I thought, how do I have control over what's happening to my body? Because it's just been happening for so long. And, how do I create some value in this experience? And so I hadn't really decided, but I left that experience thinking that I needed to have more control. And then I met a man. Well, I was actually engaged to somebody else who cheated on me. We broke up, and a few months later, I met a man, and I had been introduced to drug use by one of the family friends / pimps. And this man that I had met, like, he just seemed so strong and so capable. And, you know, I never saw him using or jonesing or those kinds of things. And I was looking for someone to rescue me. So I moved in with him fairly quickly, and he ended up being my pimp for 2 years and the father of my first child.
Oh, wow.
Very physical, lots of violence, which started off really slowly. Like, it started off with things like him poking me with a rigid pointer finger in my forehead and saying, "There's something wrong with you, girl." And that behavior escalated within 4 months to the point where if I walked in the door, he was laying me down on a kitchen table, searching my vagina, my ears, my hair for drugs or money. And I would get beaten if I had it, and I would get beaten if I didn't. My son went into care. I actually put him in care as a permanent ward because the relationship between his father and I was such that he used his relationship with our son to continue to have access to my life and my finances. And I really didn't believe that my son was getting the parenting or the care that he deserved and that I wanted for him. And nor did I believe that I was going to be able to, you know, become well quickly enough to give him what he needed. So he became a permanent ward, which helped me exit from my relationship with the pimp. However, I did continue on in that lifestyle for quite some time because of the trauma, because of the shame, because of the addictions.
Having your child given over to child protection is sometimes misunderstood by people. Sometimes you do these things out of an act of great and deep love.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's misunderstood. To care for the child at that time, to do that is got to be one of the hardest things in life to do.
Absolutely. And like, following that, had gone to family events with family that I hadn't actually met until I was 17 and I was trying to develop relationships with. And I remember one time an auntie had told, I was introducing myself to a family member and they were asking about my kids and I was trying to explain. And my auntie came by and she says, "Oh, she just likes to have kids to give them away." And I've been told, you know, "Oh, you chose drugs over your kids," and all these different pieces. And in early recovery, because they were healthy and I was not, I owned that. Yes. I carried so much shame and guilt about who I was as a mother, a friend, a partner, a human being, a family member. You know, I had robbed people that I cared about. I had done all of these things that were, now I say to people, that's not you, that's the drugs. That's the nature of the beast. That is not your nature. And it is to be expected. You love yourself through that anyways.
Yes.
But I didn't have those skills at the time. And what I know now is that really the hugest piece of addictions and involvement in the sex trade has a lot to do, as years go on, around that shame. Yeah. Lack of sense of feeling like you can do more, you are more, you deserve more, you have worth and value, because you've been told for so long, not just in words, but also in action, that you don't have value, that you are property, you are an object, and your only value lies in pleasing others. Handing money over to the drug dealer, the pimp, or laying on your back in a room with somebody you don't want to be with.
How did you move from that type of experience into one of recovery? How did that even happen?
Well, it's a process, right? And I think the journey looks different for everybody. And as I was telling you before, it is a lifelong journey. It doesn't just stop with the cessation of addictions or the cessation of involvement in the sex trade. I think, honestly, that's where recovery may begin, but it's definitely not where it stops. And I've been asked that question so many times. And it was only around 2 years ago, which would have been like 15 years into my recovery, that I realized it wasn't about, was it a harm reduction approach that worked or an abstinence approach? Was it a locked facility that worked or, you know, a voluntary facility? Really, all or any of those could have worked. What makes the difference is people loving people. So now when I look back on my recovery and I think, well, what was it that helped me to move out of the shame? And I can say I had for example, a cousin who was living with me for a brief time. I was around 2 years sober. I went out and I slipped and I was gone for 2 days and I came back carrying so much shame. I couldn't even look at her. And I said to her, I failed myself, my children, and my God. And she said to me, behind both of my shoulders, She looked me in the eyes. She held my chin. She looked me in the eyes and she said, "You're the same person who walked through this door as the one who left 2 days ago. You haven't changed. You're still strong. You're still smart. You're still powerful. You're still doing the work. You made a mistake, and we all do that, but you are worthy." And I started bawling because I didn't know how to give myself that. I didn't know how to practice self-compassion. I didn't know how to be patient with my recovery. And so having other people in my life who were able to see me fall apart and not heap shame and judgment on me or their expectations of where I should be in my recovery, but really acknowledge this is the success in that. There was other times where I would use and I would call a friend and I'd be feeling badly. And, she would say to me, hold that feeling. The next time you want to go out and use, remember that. But also remember that you came home. You didn't stay out for 6 months. You came home.
I think there are people in this world that are waiting. They want to get their degrees and they want to become skilled and knowledgeable in anti-trafficking work. And I think that's wonderful. But one of the most fundamental important things that you're talking about doesn't take a degree. It takes somebody that has true compassion, an open heart, a willing spirit, and that doesn't take a degree. And those types of things sometimes help provide the change that somebody is looking for, just the encouragement.
Yeah. So honestly, I've had those people with the degrees and counseling and social workers and whatever. And I think that those who do not have those essential, what I call healing skills or seed planting skills, do more harm than anybody else can. Because as a participant or a client, I'm looking to them. Their judgment, their expectations of my recovery are the end all be all. Like to me, they're the ones who are going to lead me into healing. So if I go to them and they say something that makes me feel like I'm failing, I'm going to own that more likely than if it were just somebody in passing, right?
Yes.
Because to me, they're the expert. I mean, in the past, they were the expert to me. Now I'm the expert to myself.
Shamin, that's now 15 years later, say to that fragile person that you were when you were involved or when you first got in recovery or even when you were a child going through all these traumas, what would you say to that young person today?
Well, I work with kids right now that are criminally involved. When I cross paths with youth that are experiencing what I have, I really try to just emphasize their worth and their progress. So again, even if there's still lots of struggles and they're making lots of mistakes, but they're learning. I point out the learning, right? They already know what they're doing wrong. They're already beating themselves up, but they don't know how to find what they're doing well. So I will tell them that. And then also it's always about inherent worth. And one of my favorite stories that I tell everybody over and over and over again is imagine a baby learning to walk and that baby falls down and we say, "Oh my God, you're so stupid. You're never going to learn to walk. You're going to crawl forever. You don't even deserve to walk. You're not worth walking. You shouldn't even have legs," right? We don't do that. Instead, what we do is we say, "Yay, you took a step or two. Here, let me hold your hand. Let's try again." And that is what we need to be able to give each other and ourselves, because the only thing that shame grows or shame fosters is illness. And we may sometimes think in good conscience that, "Oh, here I'm doing this great thing because I want to show them where they're going wrong." But that's not our job. Our job is to show them what love is until they're able to give themselves that love, right?
Yeah, I've seen it described two ways, sort of like guilt is what you feel, when you feel like you've done something wrong, you feel guilty for it. Guilt is sometimes an appropriate feeling. If you spilled a glass of water, "Oh, I'm sorry." Shame is what you feel when you believe you are something wrong. Some advocates think that if I point my finger in your face, if I just tell you, scare you straight, if I just tell you how it is, because maybe they've even traveled that road themselves, that you're going to hear that and somehow that's going to resonate with you and that's going to improve you some way. Do you think that's ever appropriate?
Well, so I'm on the fence with that in the sense that I do believe that sometimes there's a need to provide information that may not feel good, right? However, again, it's about delivery. It's about if I'm going to say to you, so for example, I was recently talking with someone in recovery who's going through a major loss and has been struggling a little bit and may or may not be pregnant. We're not sure. I had said, I can understand how this may feel like a time that would make sense to go back to old behaviors and old habits because that pain is just so big and it's really hard to think about every step. But my concern for you would be, and here is another thing, is I didn't frame it. I made it about her and what she needs as opposed to the potential that the baby's going to get harmed or how it's going to affect other people or other pieces of her life. I just said, my only concern is that you're going to be carrying so much shame about what's happening with the baby inside you if you find out that you're pregnant down the road. So let's deal with that first because I don't want you to carry that.
Yes.
Which is very different from me saying, well, that would be wrong because if you are pregnant, fill in the blanks.
What you're saying is that you have a non-judgmental attitude, but you're not painting, rainbows and unicorns and puppies. The truth, you're being genuine and authentic in that you share the truth, but they understand that you have their best interest and you really truly believe that they can recover, do better, live the life they want. And so what you're talking about is more about an authenticity instead of just a Pollyanna, everything's going to be okay.
That's right. And I mean, Brene Brown too, I love her. Oh my God. I would love to meet her.
She's wonderful.
She's so incredible. But I think a lot of this comes down to shame resilience theory. And she talks about how we have to earn the right to hear people's stories. She addresses the difference between shame and guilt. But she also talks about for those who are working towards developing shame resilience, it's important not only to be able to put a name to the shame, identify where it's coming from and share it, but to share it in a safe environment. And so as helpers, advocates, as people who are wanting to support others who are struggling, we need to make sure that we're being those safe people first. We need to make sure that when someone comes to us and shows us their shame, that we don't wrap it up in a pretty bow and ram it down their throat.
Yes.
That we help them unpack it and say, hey, you know what? I've done some of this stuff too. Or you're so strong because even though this happened, look at what you did over here, right? And we need to be that safe place to shed light on the darkness or disseminate that shame.
Absolutely.
Right?
And you talked about working with kids, and what are you doing now? I know you're doing some work on a coalition. What else are you doing?
I'm a little bit of everywhere right now, to be honest with you. I work in a school with kids who are involved in the justice system. And I also am a recovery counselor with women who are exiting the sex trade. In addition to that, I'm doing some contract work, again, with youth in the community where I'm just working with them one-on-one. That looks more like it's not necessarily therapy, although we'll call it that, but it looks more like it addresses a attachment style. So for those who are more avoidant and have a difficult time connecting in that square little room, face-to-face, just talking, we actually do healing activities together one-on-one and allow conversation to flow naturally.
What's the healing activities kind of one-on-one?
Well, for us in Winnipeg, there is a big push around Indigenous tradition, because we've got more than probably 90% of our sex trafficking victims are Indigenous. And so that might look like going medicine picking. That might look like going to a sweat. And for those things that are for not necessarily Indigenous based, like we may go to hot yoga. We may just go for a run, a jog, or a walk. Maybe we'll even go to the water slides because, hey, we got to remember how to have fun. So just opportunities to live in ways that we haven't experienced before with people who are safe, right? So creating some groundwork of positive experiences.
You named some really cultural, kind of sensitive activities, sort of non-traditional, kind of connecting type of activities. Why is that so important?
I think that what makes that important is, I really wanting to remember this word for word, and I know I'm not going to do it, but when we look at trauma-informed care, they do talk about the need to connect and give information and provide safety, right? And show that you care. But none of those things matter. I can give you information, I can show you that I care, but if I haven't connected with you first, if we haven't developed a relationship where I'm authentic and you know like I'm transparent, I'm authentic, you know that you can trust me, there's nothing else really that I can do that you're going to receive.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The importance of that is really about them getting to know me and see that I'm safe before we can really do any of the deeper work.
Yes, absolutely. So what would you advise somebody who's trying to get into this anti-trafficking work? What should they be doing? How should they approach it in terms of the way they think, the way they feel, the way they behave? What would you advise them to do?
Well, I think the very first thing that I think of when I think about anti-trafficking work and working with survivors, and this applies to myself as well, because I have my limits, and it's about knowing your limits, because you may have this huge heart that wants to, jump right into frontline work and get swallowed up in that, but maybe limit-wise, you're not able to come to the table and be kind and calm and not judgmental in a regular, consistent way because you're triggered or because that's just not your personality type. And that's okay. But then you need to find an area to work within your limits. Because if you're doing something out of a good heart, we have to look at the difference between intention and impact. Your intentions may be great. Your impact may be terrible. So knowing your limits helps you operate within a sphere where your impact will be positive. And so that looks like so many things. There's so many ways to get involved. You can be donating money to agencies that are already existing. You could be volunteering. You could be, sometimes it's as simple as practicing non-judgment in your daily life. If you live in an area where there's high trafficking, instead of giving these women dirty looks, smile, hand them a card if you can access them with the human trafficking hotline number.
Yeah, that's exactly the way I started. I don't know if you know my story, but that's what I would do. I would try to smile and wave as I drove past women. And as they looked up to me, I tried to hurry up and quickly smile and wave just so I can start that small kind of relationship. So I think that is a great way to start. And I agree wholeheartedly with you. If this is not your thing at the present moment to be engaged specifically with survivors, there are lots of other things that you can do in terms of contribution.
Maybe you're someone who's really good with words and you're writing petition letters, or you're handling fundraising, or you don't necessarily need to be working directly with survivors in order to have an impact on their lives, their healing and recovery. So it's important, really, really important to know your limits, because to work outside of your limits means that you're actually not helping. You're making yourself feel good maybe, but you're not doing the work that needs to be done. Right.
Well, and so Shamin, what do you do for your self-care? Because we talked a little bit offline about vicarious trauma, and which a lot of us can get when we do too much direct service work, or we get too wrapped up emotionally in what is happening in the world. And so what do you do to unplug and kind of take care of yourself?
Well, I am an avid lover of mental health days, that's for sure. Good. Recognizing when you need to take that step down. And often when I negotiate in a job, I do talk about there may be a need for me to take time off. And I need to know that I don't have to give any excuses. I need to know that you're going to be able to support me in looking after myself. So that's something that I kind of contract ahead of time. But in addition to that, I found hot yoga is amazing, because it's about connecting with the body. I believe that the body is the subconscious mind. So all the traumas and stuff that you carry that you're not even really, maybe you don't even remember, we carry that in our body. It's in backaches, it's in stomach aches, it's in headaches, it's in just this constant tension, maybe a gnawing feeling in your stomach. So hot yoga is about breathing and connecting with the body and sending love into those places that are stiff and that are kind of responding to some of that hidden, unresolved body memory trauma.
I love the idea of relaxation, of getting rid of stress. I tried hot yoga. I probably donated lots of money to hot yoga because I pay $100 and I'm like, oh, I'm going to buy a packet of 10. And then I get in there and I'm halfway through hot yoga and I'm like, oh, I'm dying. I remember why I hate hot yoga. You can have my $100.
I practice very differently from most people. To me, it's not important for me to go in there and work at the same pace as everybody, breathe at the same pace as everybody, do what they're doing. It is my time to be with me. And so people might be doing some crazy pose on their head, who knows, whatever they're doing. If my body and me decide that, you know what, that feels like too much work, or that doesn't, I'll lay down on my back and do some breathing and listen to the music or what have you. It's about connecting with me and listening to what my body needs and giving myself what I need. It's an hour to just be there with me and not compare and not worry about what anybody else is doing. Mind you, I like to do it in a group because I believe in the power of shared energy. And so everybody in the room, they have that same intention of growing their connection with their body. Some are better at it than others. Some have a lot of self-love. So I get to benefit from that self-love energy. I get to benefit from that motivation energy, that ambition energy, whatever the energies are in the room.
I love the getting in the pods, the water pod. I don't know if you've done that ever before, but there's these pods you get in and lay there. I'm kind of sort of like a lay there and let it relax me. But I think I'm going to try this hot yoga again. I'll try it in the winter.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to text you or email you as soon as I get out and see if because I'm not usually sending good vibes to the other people. I'm trying to get the hell out of the room. Well, Shamin also do a lot of spoken word. I remember when we first met, you came to the Human Trafficking and Social Justice Conference. I loved your energy then, and I'm totally serious about that. I feel like if you weren't living in Canada and I wasn't here, if we were neighbors, we'd probably be the best of friends because I love your energy. I like your spirit a lot. So,
thank you so much.
Yeah, so you did some spoken word, and I don't know if you have a few lines that you'd like to share with people because I just love the way that your soul kind of puts words together. So do you have anything you'd like to share?
I could share intimacy with you. I feel like it's the one I know the best.
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right, so here we go. To be whole. To be healed. To know how to feel what I feel. Intimacy. Into me, see. Trauma. Complex and compounded from the time I was 2 until now. How do I let myself be seen and show the broken parts of my heart? And the psyche shattered like glass by a past I had no control over. Once a whore that got bought, a lady of the night that did things no lady might, but before then, a blow-up doll that breathes and sees hurt and fear when any man came near my childlike form. It became the norm to find my power in the pleasure of another. Until I became a mother, abused by my lover. Intimacy. Into me, see. Shame. Real and relentless from the time I was 2 until now. How do I let myself be seen and show the broken parts of my heart in the psyche, shattered like glass by a past I had no control over? When I cannot see myself beyond the choices of my past or believe in a love that lasts. My spirit, scarred and old, lost in the lies that others have told about me. I seek my peace in prose, sharing my story with those I keep at arm's length, finding my strength in the word, both written and heard. Intimacy. Into me, see. See the broken parts of my heart and love me still. See the psyche shattered like glass by a past I had no control over, and understand me anyways. See who I am beneath the hurt and the fear, and draw me near. Intimacy into me. See. To be whole. To be healed. To just know what is real.
Yes. Yes. Did I tell you she was bad? I told you she was bad. That's why you are on here. Oh my God. So, Shamin, tell me what the future holds for you.
Well, I am strongly considering, I do know I want to get my master's in social work. I would love to do research and training. So I'm just kind of exploring the process. I don't really know what that looks like, but I would love to embark on private practice, do research, do training, do some action therapy. One of the things I'm looking at most closely right now is responsible survivor engagement, because I think that even when we're engaging survivors and we do recognize they have an impact, they're able to build relationships with new survivors, in really great ways that people without lived experience can. We've kind of missed the piece. We've missed that they are still engaged in ongoing recovery. They're still experiencing triggers and they're in the field of their trauma. And so how do we engage them responsibly in employment, in volunteer work, in peer leadership? How do we engage them responsibly and make space for their recovery?
Good. And so if people want more information about that, engaging responsibly, or they want to book you to speak or present, or maybe other survivors want to reach out to you, where can people get more information about you and what you do?
Absolutely. I do have a website. It's shaminbrownconsulting.org, ShaminBrown consulting.org. So there's that. I also have a page on Facebook called Shamin One Woman's Journey, where you can book appointments. And I'm always just open to people emailing me as well and checking in with, if they have questions, if there's a resource they're looking for, or if they need a speaker or a guest lecturer at a university or any of those things.
Yes. Thank you so much, Shamin, for all the wonderful work you do, for just being you, and the contributions that you made, and the contributions we all know you'll continue to make. So thank you so much for taking the time out to be on the Emancipation Nation podcast. And I hope you'll come back in the future.
Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to say, the minute I met you and I heard you speak and I saw all of the amazing work that you're doing with the conference you have out there, I wanted to bring the same thing to Canada. So
yes.
Hoping to get that going. But I just saw someone who was so powerful, and not in a power over kind of way. I see you with your volunteers, with your employees, with the people who are around you, and they just have so much love and respect and admiration for you. And you've created so much safety in your community. And I aspire really to be you in the future.
Well, thank you.
So, yeah.
Because I aspire one day to sit by the lake and retire. So, okay, well, thank you so much. And we're going to call you back in the future and just talk more about what you're up to and more about this responsible engagement.
Excellent. Awesome. Thanks so much, Celia. It was wonderful talking with you today.
Thank you. Till next time. Thanks, Shamin. I've been talking to Shamin Brown from Winnipeg, Canada, an artist, advocate, and social worker. I try to keep up with Shamin, and occasionally I check her Facebook page, One Woman's Journey. She once shared comments that you may have seen traveling around the internet, and this struck me as something that reminds me of her. If Maya Angelou died when she was 20, she would have died in prostitution and a single mom. If Malcolm X died when he was 20, he would have died as Detroit Red, a thief, a woman beater, and a drug addict. If Shamin died when she was young, she would have died a young woman of horrendous abuse.
and addicted to drugs. If I died at 20, I would have died on welfare and living in poverty. People's experiences often lead to their great destiny. We all have a story to tell. And like Shamin reminds us, you have to earn the right to hear the story by offering non-judgment, empathy, and respect, and help to those who are learning to walk again. Throughout this journey as anti-trafficking advocates, you're learning not to just do something, but do the best thing. If you like this episode of Emancipation Nation, please subscribe, and I'll send you the weekly podcast. Until then, the fight continues.